So here we are at Bitesize Edge, and it's time for another podcast. And I'm lucky enough today to be talking to another Edgeite, as we love to call you. That's you, Rita. Anyone who's been on a Edge course, and I've got the pleasure today of talking to the fabulous Rita Ross. And Rita, you're going to share with us quite a personal story, but one which I certainly found inspiring. I find you inspiring, and I think it would be really, really useful for our listeners to hear and learn more. So, Rita, over to you. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks, Pip. Absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for asking me to come and share my story. So I thought I'd go right back to, this is about Rett syndrome and my daughter's diagnosis, and I suppose the journey we've been on and I've been on. So Frankie, my daughter, was born on the 10th of May 2005. And at the time, I already had a little boy. We had a little boy who was 3 years old, Cameron. And having a little girl was a dream come true, because I thought, got a boy, now got a girl, and we got our little family complete. And I desperately wanted another child because I didn't want Cameron to be an only child at the time. So everything for the first few months was perfect. Frankie was a lovely baby, very easy, hit all her milestones in terms of, the midwife's checks and development reviews, until it got to around 5 to 6 months, sort of that month there. I was due to go back to work full time. And I noticed Frankie doing this, it was like she was startled, like babies jump, but her eyes would roll back when she did it. And it was literally a split second. So I thought, that's really odd. And I saw her do it a couple of times, and I was the only one who'd seen it. So I went to the doctor, who checked all over, said, can't see anything that's wrong with her at all. Could be just a baby thing. But, if you want to keep an eye on her and, get any other concerns. So it was really bothering me because I'd seen it then a couple of more times. So we went to a private doctor, actually, because I had healthcare from my work. And they did the same, all the checks. And they said, look, you're clearly seeing something that we're not.
Yeah.
The best thing you could do is video it. I said, oh, my God. I said, like, it's a split second. So it's, well, whatever you could capture on video would really help us, because that will, show what's going on.
Yeah.
So back in those days, we didn't have the phone, so we had our video recorder. And weirdly enough, the next morning she did this movement, but she did a couple in a row, and I managed to just catch the last bit on the video. And then it panicked me, because then I was could look back on what was happening. So I was so worried. Rather than wait to go back to the hospital, we went to A&E.
Right.
And they, again, at the hospital, checked all over and couldn't find anything wrong, but they could see this video as well. So they were saying, well, there's clearly something, but, she was giggling and she was, just a happy little baby. So they said, look, what we'll do is keep you in overnight for observation, and then we'll see how we get on. They no sooner took us up in the lift. As I stepped out the lift, she started doing like a whole cluster of these jumping movements. And there was a group of doctors sort of standing talking. And so I rushed over, and this one doctor, which we found out was the senior doctor, called out to the nurse straight away, get them in a private room, get whatever, which was steroids at the time, I didn't know. So I was like, oh my God, thank God I'm not going mad. Yeah. I know there's something wrong. I'd never in a million years think it's serious. So then the doctor came in and he said, look, what we've seen is infantile spasms.
Right.
He said, so basically convulsions. So she's having convulsions. It could be just one of those baby things, or it could be something more serious. And so we'll start doing blood tests and stuff.
Rita, how at that stage, how were you feeling?
I think at that time, I was kind of pleased that they'd found something, but I never in a million years thought it was anything serious, because she was such a engaging baby. She was giggly, you know, she played with her toys. She just did everything normally. So I could never think that it would be anything serious. I just thought, oh, well, it's, you know, babies do have convulsions. I'd heard of that with febrile convulsions, etc. So I just thought, oh, I'm sure it's nothing. So they kept us in and they put her on steroids. And once they put her on steroids, she just kind of went into like this zombie state, really, where she just slept, woke up, screamed for food, slept again. So she'd kind of lost her personality.
Right.
And assume it was what, you know, they wanted to, you know, get the steroids to stop these seizures. And then they did lots and lots of blood tests, and they did an MRI scan. And then I still thought she was going to be fine. Then the blood test all came back negative, but a few days later the MRI scan came back. So the doctors came and spoke to us and said, look, we're really sorry. This is much more serious than we ever thought. It looks like she's got something called myelating, which was her brain wasn't producing enough, I think it's white blood cells, don't quote me on that, but it's one of the cells, red or white, which means basically her brain won't develop. She won't develop any further, basically. Her brain won't develop. So that was the biggest kind of blow, because at that point we thought, well, that's it then, you know, Frankie's not going to be able to do a thing ever again. And I think that was probably one of my worst points, because then I was just left in the hospital. Obviously Gavin had to go home, it was just me and Frankie, and I kept looking at this baby thinking she was completely normal, and now she's not, you know. So then we obviously had to phone all the family and let them know. And so the next day we had loads of visitors and everybody was upset, crying. And so I said to Gavin, look, I said, you better take Cameron out of here, take him to the park, you know, with the kids, just have a break, because it was just such an awful place, you know, atmosphere. And then while they were out, the doctor came back in. He'd been to talk to a neurologist. Oh, her MRI had gone to Oxford, to the neurology department there. And the neurologist said, there's nothing wrong with this child's brain, it's completely normal. What it looks like's happened is whoever's reviewed it at Stoke Mandeville has compared her brain to an adult brain rather than to a baby's brain.
Right.
But it goes, you know, this is what I do for a living and nothing wrong with this child's brain. So then he came back and said to me, look, there's been a mistake, actually, there's nothing wrong. So we'd gone from thinking that Frankie was never going to be able to move or do a thing again to now she's back to normal.
Yeah. How was that? So, a bit of a roller coaster, Rita? That must have been a huge roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, that's exactly how I describe it. It was, yeah. Emotions were just all over the place, from thinking, because I thought I'd done something wrong as well. Because I was thinking, what did I eat when I was pregnant? You know, I was working, did I, you know, do something wrong? So there's all these things in my head. And then to go to the point of, no, there's nothing wrong now. It was just the weirdest thing. So, but we were happy. And they started to wean Frankie off the steroids, and Frankie came back to Frankie. They said then, look, we're not out of the woods, because clearly there's something that's gone on, but it doesn't look like it's anything serious. So we went all home happy. I went back to work. Frankie was with, we'd got a nanny to look after her and Cameron. Everything went back to kind of normal. And they kept Frankie under review. So every year we would go back and she'd have a checkup. And she carried on doing all the things that normal children would do. The only thing that she was delayed in was her speech. Right. So she would say words, but she never strung a sentence together. But we kept putting it down to, it's obviously a delay from what's happened, you know, from the seizures. So kind of, again, didn't think serious. And so she was walking, just doing all the things that a normal little one would do at that age. And she then started nursery because she was old enough to go to nursery. And it was about then, so she was probably about 2.5, between 2.5 and 3 years old, that we went back for another review. And the doctors were concerned that, as well as her speech that wasn't developing, her coordination had got worse. So, you know, where they put the blocks in the different shapes in, you know, the little boxes they have. She was really struggling with doing that. And they were saying this is another milestone that's kind of a bit worrying.
Right.
So they said, look, can we just repeat all of the blood tests that she had? And we noticed that 2 of them hadn't been done the first time when she was in hospital. But, you know, so let's do them as well. And then, you know, we've left no stone unturned, just in case there was another error somewhere. So again, they did all the blood tests. Everything was coming back negative. And we had one last blood test to come back. And it was, they said, the worst one. And they really didn't think that she had this. So we were going on holiday. They said, go on holiday, don't worry, I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll be in touch when you're back. Off we went on holiday, had a lovely time.
Good.
Came back from holiday and there was an answer phone message from the hospital to say, we'd like you and your husband to come together to the hospital for an important meeting. So we phoned and they wouldn't tell us anything over the phone. But anyway, so we went to this meeting. And that's when they told us that we're really sorry, but actually what we thought she didn't have, she's actually tested positive for Rett syndrome. And I said, Tourette's? Because I'd never heard of Rett syndrome.
The first time you said it to me, Rita,
Tourette's is something I was thinking, well, she can't really talk that well. So, but, and
I remember when you first said it to me, Rita, I kind of went to the Tourette's. I'd never heard of Rett's at all.
Yeah. So no, he wrote it down on a bit of paper. So it goes, it's RETT, Rett syndrome. And I said, well, what's that? And then he started to explain what Rett syndrome was. So basically, Rett syndrome is a genetic disorder, but it's non-hereditary. So it's random, can happen to any child, anytime. Mainly girls, because it's the X chromosome that is damaged. So there's a deletion on the X chromosome, and and therefore girls survive because they've got 2 X chromosomes. Boys you'd have a miscarriage because they normally wouldn't survive because they've only got 1 X chromosome. So, and depending where on the chromosome or how much deletion there is will depend on the severity of Rett syndrome. So it'll be a spectrum, like there are with most things. And in the worst case scenario, you know, the girls don't walk, don't talk, suffer with scoliosis, seizures, tube fed. They basically need 24-hour care for the rest of their lives. And that, I think, was that moment of, oh my God, we're back to almost where we were right at the beginning, and this wasn't meant to happen. And so that sort of, and also I think at that point it didn't make sense because all I could see was Frankie running around the doctor's office, picking toys out toy box, doing all the things that, you know, a normal little child would do, and all of a sudden I've been given this news, not going to be able to do anything like that. So I think it's really hard to accept.
Yeah, as I say, the two don't correlate, do they? What you're hearing and what you're physically seeing, let alone the emotional element that must come into play with it. But even take that bit out, just the way the brain works, trying to pull those 2 bits of evidence together to make them fit. It's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it just didn't make sense.
Mm.
But of course they say don't go and Google it, la la la. Obviously the first thing you do, come home and Google Rett syndrome. And at the time, back then, there wasn't a whole lot of information still. You know, there was a lot of historic information still on the web. But I remember reading one bit, and it stuck in my head forever, saying, with your daughter with Rett syndrome, the only thing you'll ever need to worry about is wiping her dribble and turning her video player, which was video player then, video player on for her. And that image in my head just stuck with me, because I was thinking, so that's her life. That's all she's going to be able to do. But it's still very hard. So at that time, all I kept thinking was 30 years ahead. What's going to happen? What's going to happen in 30 years' time? How are we going to cope? What's going to happen to her? Who's going to look after her? There was all this kind of emotion. And also the other bit of, I wanted a sister for Cameron, or a brother or whatever. I wanted a companion so that he wouldn't be alone in later life. And now he would have somebody that he'd potentially have to care for. And it just changed. All my little dream I had in my head just changed. And then I realised how much we do live in the future rather than living in the now.
Yeah.
So that was the first. But I think at that point I also knew I had to do something purposeful to get myself over this piece of just dwelling and self-pity, really. I did a lot of why me, why us, it's not fair, why her, so I did a lot of that. And I cried a lot. And my mum was Italian, a very strong Italian mum. And she was staying with us at the time. And she said to me one night, "Why do you keep crying?" So I said, "Oh, Mum," thinking she really didn't understand. She was older, and did she know what was going to happen to Frankie? I said, "Mum, do you know what's going to happen?" So she said, "Of course I know. I know what it is, and I know what it's like to have a child. No, I don't know what it's like to have a child that's got, some disabilities." She said, "But what I do know is that for me, you've got two choices. You can cry every day. You can have a breakdown. Everybody will feel sorry for you, and they'll understand you've gone through a terrible thing in your life. But that happens, then what happens to your family? Because that means you let your husband down, you let Cameron down, and you let Frankie down. Or you can pull yourself together. You can give Frankie what she needs, which all she needs is love. And you can look after your husband, your son, and your family, and have a great life." And I remember going to bed that night really angry with my mum, thinking that she's made that sound so easy, and how it's not easy when it's inside your head and your heart. But the next day I thought, do you know what? She's right. This is my life, and I can either make it something terrible and dwell on that, or I can do something really positive. This has happened for a reason, and maybe this is to teach me something, or to teach other people something, or I can help somebody else. So I got in touch with a charity that was running at the time, Rett UK, and started doing masses of fundraising. We went to a conference in Paris. There was a World Congress for Rett. Went to that, learned as much as I could. They were doing extensive research because they'd found out how to reverse Rett syndrome in mice. So they knew that you could give a mouse Rett syndrome and it would be days away from dying. Its paws would all be clumped up, like the girl's hands get clumped up together, or they do repetitive movements. It would not be able to breathe, shakes, all of that. And they injected the protein back in the brain, and within 24 hours, the mice go back to being normal mice again and live a normal longevity of life. So they know that Rett syndrome could be the first neurological disorder to be reversed. However, everything takes time in the scientific world and research, but it gave me a real purpose. So I came back and started doing loads of fundraising through work and all my contacts, and raised a few £100,000. But the charity at the time weren't funding research. They would only fund for supporting families, which is obviously really important. However, I really wanted the research to progress, because I just thought that is the only way these girls and women will have a better life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or that if it's not for now, then at least in the future, if somebody gets a diagnosis of Rett syndrome, they can say, but don't worry, there's now an injection, there's now something, and they can go on to lead a normal life.
Rita,
So,
how long ago was this?
So this was 10 years ago.
Okay.
10 years ago, yeah. Actually 11 this year that we started the charity. So I got in touch with a lady in America who had already started a research trust charity, so purely focused on research. And she said to me, why don't you set up a charity in the UK to do the same? I'll help you. And I said, look, I really haven't got time. I've got a full-time job, kids. And she said, well, I know a couple of other people that in the UK that would be interested. And I think with your kind of business input, this other mum and dad that I know, perhaps between the three of you could do something. So she put me in touch with Rachel and a guy called Andy. And then I had another lady that I'd met at the conference in Paris. So the four of us got together and started the charity in the UK, which is now Reverse Rett, which has been going 11 years. And we've raised over 6 million so far for research. So that started, I think, real sense of purpose in terms of what I could do that gave something really positive.
Yeah.
But it I think, taught me that, finding that resilience within you, what is it that drives you, that means that you can keep taking steps forward. And what really helped me was focusing on today, like, what can I do now? Don't worry about what's going to happen in the future, because the future is going to be what it is, and anything else could happen that you don't want to happen in the world. So just try to focus on what you can do and take those one steps forward that has led to, a really successful charity. We've opened a Rett clinic at King's College Hospital, which is doing some trials on various drugs to see if they can help with the different symptoms that the girls get. And now I realise that actually by dealing with it like that, that actually I've coped with all of the symptoms that Frankie has since got from Rett syndrome. So she's gone from being a little girl that could run, jump, walk, talk, use her hands, was like a normal little girl, to now she's 15, and she's lost all of her vocalizations. So she literally can't make any noises apart from giggle still. That's the only noise really she can make. She hasn't got purposeful use of her hands anymore. She walks but toe walks, so it's really poor walking. She's got not very good balance, so you have to kind of be with her to do that. And yeah, she can't do anything. She watches DVDs a lot of the time. At school, she's got an eye gaze, and we use that a little bit at home, where she can talk with her eyes. But she's still got her whole personality inside her. She still loves all the, appropriate things. And she just loves all the High School Musicals and pantos and, Grease and all the things that a 15-year-old would love. She loves the boys. So, and she loves people. So kept all of that inside her, and we have to remind people that she does know everything. Her brain is normal. Yeah. It's just that she can't express what's inside her like we can. And we hope that as we go on that she'll learn to communicate better through the eye gaze, a bit like Stephen Hawking's, was able to communicate. And that has helped a lot of girls with Rett syndrome.
Okay.
And I've been able to go on and help a lot of families, particularly through the first few years of diagnosis and accepting and moving forward, just from my experience of what I've been through. So I'd wish it differently.
Yeah, you talked about a sense of purpose, and how the charity helped give you a sense of purpose, and also enable you to kind of help you deal with the future symptoms and things that Frankie has suffered from. How do you feel that sense of purpose has really helped in other areas of your life as well?
I think that piece around the sense of purpose has been good for all of us in the family, because it's helped everybody feel that although this has happened to Frankie, actually so I'll give you Cameron as an example. He's a really caring person. So he doesn't worry about talking to people with disabilities. He would treat everybody in that way. And I remember when he was at junior school, there was a little lad that came to his school 2 or 3 times a week, who was in a wheelchair, and Cameron would always take him out in the playground, find a game that he could play with him. So I think that kind of, because I found that purpose, I think it's helped everybody kind of just come on board. With a lot of the support that I've had for the charity from friends, from strangers that I've met, as well as family, has again helped everybody feel that there's something they can do to contribute. No matter how small that is, whether it's doing a little tea party or doing a walk or a run or whatever, it's meant that people have come together as well to feel like they can do something to support as well.
Okay.
And I think I now do coaching, and I think it's really helped me to have that now, what I find resilience and purpose, to help other people find it, particularly if they find themselves in a situation that they didn't want to be in.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a challenge, and it's also interesting in some ways that sometimes that we can find these things end up kind of almost defining us. And how do you keep it in a way that it doesn't define you, but it becomes what it clearly is, which is a real driving force for you? How do you hold it at bay from being kind of almost the badge you wear? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's because I just want to keep things as normal as possible. I want to have just a normal family. So I treat it like I've got a normal family life. I worked full time for 35 years. It's only the last couple of years that I've gone self-employed. So I've tried, I think, that normality rather than making it the thing, the only thing. So that it didn't overtake. And I was very conscious of that at the beginning as well, of not allowing it to, because I could see how it could become all-consuming, and then everything would just be about Rett syndrome. And I think actually Frankie's made that quite clear as well, because she hates me talking about Rett syndrome in front of her. But if I talk about it, she'll just look and say, I'm not Rett syndrome, I'm Frankie. It happens to be that you've labelled me with that, or somebody said that that's what I've got. But for her, she's just who she is.
Wow.
So I think that all helps.
Which is so true. I mean, it was interesting listening to what you said about Cameron with the little boy in the wheelchair. How easy it is to slip into a way where you almost label an individual and see, for want of a better phrase, see the disability, not the person. And the importance of seeing the person.
Yes, yeah. And that's why, when we go out, I've always had so when we moved into a new house, I gave sent leaflets and a note to all of the neighbours. Because where we'd grown up before, where Frankie had grown up in the village, we knew everybody and everybody had grown up with her. So we used to do a Find a Cure for Frankie fun day every year, and lots of things that would, incorporate her into the community. And I didn't want other children being scared to ask or trying to avoid her because they don't know what's wrong with her. So she grew up there and everybody knew her. And I was worried that moving to a new area that people we'd be in the same position. So we did the same here, and it's been amazing because people have been, oh great, thank you for allowing us to ask questions and find out more. And again, we've had such great local support. So I think for me it's important to educate people as well. So
and
they do talk to her. And
yes, I find it so powerful. And I think, Rita, when I met you, well, your enthusiasm is infectious anyway. So I think it is, and I found it fascinating to hear and learn about it, because I had never heard of Rett syndrome at all. I said at the beginning, I find you quite inspirational, and I do, because your drive to do what you're doing whilst maintaining a normal family, and in all honesty, Frankie, what is normal anyway? It's whatever it is to us, isn't it? Crikey, it's whatever our normal might be is normal. But I find it quite phenomenal that you're able to, and you keep all those aspects moving forward in the way that you do. It's quite inspirational. I haven't yet met Frankie. I've nearly met her on a couple of occasions, but I do look forward. As I said to you, as you know, my daughter's called Frankie as well. My Frankie drops her E, so it's Frank I.
Oh yeah, okay, bit trendy.
Yeah, she has to be a bit trendy,
Yeah, it's funny. I think as well, what I've learned over the years is that people are so kind, and I remember the group of ladies that I met at the NLP course that I did with Edge, and how amazing that bunch of women have become, to one with a local business helping the charity, another lady who wrote poetry, has written several poems for Frankie. And Frankie listens to them every day because they're all about her, so she just loves it. Just how people have used their talents, and this lady Vanessa has recorded them, so we've got them on me. And she just asked me for information about Frankie, because obviously I think she's met her once but doesn't really know her. Stories, and Frankie's like, oh my god, how does somebody know all about that, all about me? And she just loves listening to him. So it's funny how you meet the most wonderful people that can do something. So I find everybody else really inspiring as well, because for what you do at Edge, and bringing people together like that, I don't know, it's amazing what happens in your life, and how
isn't it how you meet people, I find quite inspiring in many ways as well. And you guys as a group were quite phenomenal. I'll never forget the 8 of you, wasn't there? 8 of you? Yeah, there were 8 of you.
8, yeah.
Yeah, and kind of that moment of going, right, 8 females in the room for 6 days. Potentially it's going to go one of two ways. And it went one way, and it completely blew my mind of just how fabulous you all were as a group. But I think what you talk about there, though, Rita, is also something that you've demonstrated through your story there, and thank you for sharing it, which is also about the energy that you give out, isn't it? If you're giving out the kind of an open, engaging, encompassing energy of moving forward, then you attract people. You attract people who will come on your journey with you. And who will support and help and guide and all those sorts of things. And for me, that's something that you, from the first time I met you in Crockers with the glass of champagne, if you remember.
Yeah.
Those
were the days.
Yeah, with the glass of alcohol. Woohoo! All the way through, Rita, it's that sort of energy that I'm grateful to have been engaged with. So for people who might be listening to this, who would like to say, I want to find out more about Rett syndrome, I want to find out how I can help, give me the details of your charity. We'll also add them onto the podcast anyway. But Rita, what's the details of the charity? Making Change Happen. I see the banner.
Yeah, so it's called Reverse Rett, Making Change Happen for people with Rett syndrome. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the address is www.rett.org.uk.
Okay,
anyone that wants to find the website.
Okay, www.rett.org.uk. Perfect. Okay, well, we'll add that onto the link.
Reverse Rett.
Reverse Rett. Fabulous. So, Rita, thank you very much for your time today. It's been really, really good to hear hear the story. We will actively promote this with the links for the charity and encourage people to contribute. Did you say over £6 million you've raised so far?
Yeah, the UK charity.
That is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So for anyone who's go Rita, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and you know, these are obviously really difficult times for charities, because with lots of events that we would have had planned and people had planned not happening, so any help that, you know, we can get. So I'm very grateful, Pip, for just allowing me, you know, it obviously fundraising is very important for the charities to survive and to continue the work that we're doing, but also awareness is also really important to me. So I've always been, you know, an advocate of just the awareness. People know, the more they know, the more educated, the more that they can probably help other people. So I'm really grateful for you for giving me this time to share my story and let people know about Rett syndrome.
Thank you for doing it, Rita. And for those of you listening, you'll find this and many other of our Bitesize podcasts on iTunes. You'll also find them on Spotify, or you can follow the links straight through to SoundCloud. But for now, thank you very much, Rita. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'll stop recording now and speak to you very soon. Take care.